John Morgan is one of the largest investors in our medium, a former billboard owner himself, and founder of one of the most recognized law firms in America, Morgan & Morgan. I think we all know the firm, and we all know what he looks like. Everyone does. John is here today to talk about building a brand that dominates and what it takes to win.
People that I was interviewing you, and I was like, I'm interviewing, John Morgan. He's one of the biggest lawyers in the world. They're like, Morgan & Morgan, everybody knows your brand and your business.
John Morgan, Morgan & Morgan. You've seen the ads. The man spent $350 million last year. He's planning on doing $500 million this year. And as you give him a billboard, he wants it. He is incredible at marketing.
Advertising isn't optional. It's the engine. More presence. More attention. John Morgan saw it early. And then the future showed up. Everyone said out of home was done. Everything would be targeted, skippable, avoidable. Skip the ad. Skip the pre-roll. Skip the interruption. Consumers are streaming, filtering, opting out. But there's one ad you can't skip. Out of home. Today, Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm and the largest buyer of out-of-home in the country. Outspending brands like Amazon, McDonald's. Not because we have to, but because it works. Making people look twice. Through creativity and psychology. As more ads get skipped, blocked, avoided, brands are coming back to out of home in a big way. The only question is, what's left once Morgan & Morgan gets there first?
Please join me in giving a warm welcome to John Morgan, founder and attorney, Morgan & Morgan.
Well, it is good to be with all of you. But whenever I speak to this many people, I think it's important that I say the most important thing first. You ready? If you've been injured in an accident, hurt on the job, or the victim of medical malpractice, call Morgan & Morgan, fighting for the people. I've been trying to think of what I was going to say here and to you all, and I thought, well, I just wrote a book. And I wrote a book, and it's called Life is Luck. Lessons from a paper boy. I was a paper boy. I don't know if any of you are paper boys or paper girls, but it's a tough job. And so when I wrote the book, Life is Luck, it was kind of spurred by that thing that guy said. Forbes magazine had me on the cover of their billionaires issue, and you're like looking at that, and it seemed like yesterday that I was a paper boy in Lexington, Kentucky, where this man front row played football at UK. And it went just like that fast. And so I started thinking about how did it all happen? How did it all come to be? And then I started writing the book. When I finished the book, Forbes just had me in their magazine of the 250 self-made people in America, had me at 92. Oprah was at 1, so I didn't feel slighted. I mean, my wife said to me once, she said, I believe if I met Oprah that we would be fast friends. I said, Ultima, the reason Oprah is a billionaire is every woman in America thinks if they met Oprah, they would be fast friends. So when I started to write the book and thinking about everything that's happened to me, luck was a huge, huge component of it. And so then I started thinking about all that. They call people that do big things visionaries. Steve Jobs is a visionary. Walt Disney, another paper boy, was a visionary. Martin Luther King, another paper boy, was a visionary. But that word should not be used, and let me tell you why. There's a lot of people who have big visions, big dreams, visionaries, but they never take action on their vision. When my kids were little, we would go to church and then we'd go to breakfast, and I spent about half the time on the floor picking up crayons that had spilled onto the floor. And I said to my wife, I said, you know, somebody needs to make a crayon that doesn't roll so I don't have to get on the floor. Well, about 6 months later, we went to Denny's for breakfast, and they brought the crayons, and they were triangles. And I was destroyed. I said, look, this was my idea. And she's looking at me, I said, ultimately, this was my idea. This was my vision. She goes, I know, John. But I never took action. To be very successful in any business, you have to take action. So when you hear of visionaries, there are zillions of visionaries. How many times have you all seen something that you thought of once upon a time? There's visionaries, and then there's vision makers. And there's a huge difference between visionaries and vision makers. And standing between the vision and the vision maker are what I call vision blockers. They're the people or circumstances in your life that stop you from being great. And it happens in all forms or fashions. It can be your own family. Remember this, there's a lot of people that don't want you to be successful. There's a lot of family members that would rather see a total stranger win the Powerball than you. You're like, well, that's true though. They don't want it to be you, it's too much. They'd rather have a total stranger in a different city. There are partners and business partners that hold you back, that block your vision, yet they stay with you year in and year out. There's circumstances that stop you as well. And then there can also be your spouse. Spouses can be big vision blockers because, hey, we're doing good. Why do we take a risk? Who's going to do that? But the number one vision blocker is you, us. We stop ourselves because we have the vision, we have the dream, but we don't have the get up and go to get up and go. My big vision in my life, I'm in all sorts of business. I don't golf, and the reason I don't golf is when Tiger Woods is hitting the ball in the water, I'm not interested in that sport. It's like I was watching this golf thing on Netflix the other day, and the greatest golfers in the world were just shanking stuff. I mean, I'm like, why bother with that? I don't hunt. I don't like the taste of deer. I can smell the fur on the meat. And I don't like to fish. I don't like the only guy having fun on the fishing boat is the guy driving the boat. I'm back there holding the drink, and I'm not interested in ripping the fish's face off and then catching and releasing him and say, hey, look how good I am. Here you go with no eye. So I decided that my hobbies would be business. I have Marriott hotels, I have a chain of attractions, I build shopping centers, I build apartments. I hunt money. I don't hunt deer. I'd rather hunt money than hunt deer, plus venison tastes like shit to me. So, to keep myself busy I used to play basketball a lot, but then you get old, and then I used to play tennis a lot, but then you get old. So I got to have new things to do. So my big vision a few years ago was what I called the Google law firm. I asked myself this question: what would Google do? What would Google be if it was a law firm? The answer was it would be everywhere for everyone. It wouldn't just be in Florida. It wouldn't just be in Texas. It would be nationwide, which is a very big vision because law firms are, especially personal injury firms, are small and local. But I set off on that vision. And I did a lot of things with that vision. And I decided to go forward with it. When I was writing the book, I live in Maui. I live in Maui from Christmas to Easter. Somebody told me yesterday they like my tan. And I told her, I said, look, the reason I live in Maui and kind of move around the country looking for sun is that I decided that brown fat looks better than white fat. So I am perpetually tanned, and also I've got hard fat, and hard brown fat's almost like muscle. So I'm in good shape, okay? I look good. So I started that whole process of writing that book. And what I came up with is something that people don't like to hear, especially successful people, is that a lot of what happened to me was luck. 1,000 left turns, 1,000 right turns, 1,000 U-turns. And here I am. I met my wife by chance. I bet many of you met your spouse by chance. And if you had life to do over again, it never, ever happens. That happened to me. I went to daily mass. I'm not a daily mass guy. I went to daily mass when I was at the University of Florida in law school, and there she was. And if I don't go to mass that day, I don't marry her, I don't have my 4 children, I don't have my 6 grandchildren, just that one day. And that's what life was. As I started researching and thinking about it, think of all the different things that we have no control over that determine our success. Just being born, I spent a little bit on the first chapter, just being born is like a zillion to one. I mean, almost impossible to be born. The country you're born in. Think if you were born in North Korea, how'd that work out for you? You had no control over that. You know, how about, China? How would you like to be born in China? Who are your parents? Who your parents are make a huge difference, and you don't get to pick them. Sometimes we like to get rid of them, but especially when they get older and won't give up the keys. But who your parents are. Jeff Bezos said he won the lottery with parents. They're the ones that seeded his crazy idea to sell books online. Bill Gates is kind of a goofy guy, as we know, but his mother realized he was a goofy guy, and she really nurtured him and made him sociable. Genetics has a huge influence on what we do. How you look. In my research, it showed me that handsome and good-looking people are more trusted than people who are not. People who are tall have better luck and fortune in business than people who are short. So I got fucked. And the person you marry, 50% of marriages end in divorce. A whole bunch are still married but very unhappy. The research I did, about 17% of married people are happily married. Think about trying to be successful with that hanging over your head. And then the era you're born in. Mark Cuban, who's a friend of mine, told me, if I'd been born 3 years earlier or 3 years later, I'm not Mark Cuban. Same thing goes for Bill Gates. Same thing goes for Steve Jobs. Same thing goes for me. I got into this business right when people were allowed to advertise, Bates versus Arizona in 1977. If I was born today, I don't get this run and start that I had. Because back in those days, people who would couldn't because they didn't have the money. People who could wouldn't because it was taboo. And so I had this lane that I got in early. If I had to come and compete with me today, I don't know if I'd do it. I got into this business because my brother Tim's bad luck, he was a lifeguard at Walt Disney World, and he was rendered a quadriplegic. And he was 18 years old. And it destroyed my life. And Disney, where he got hurt, fought him like he was the Taliban. And we were poor, and we were hopeless and powerless and helpless. And I became enraged. And I said to myself early on, I know what I'm going to do. Now that I've seen this system that Tim's in, I'm going to come back and get these motherfuckers. And so Tim's bad luck turned out to be my good luck. It turned out to be my success. And Tim helped me build my firm. He ran my call center until he passed away. And so many successful people, they don't like the idea of being lucky. They just don't like it. But there is so much to pay attention to. Look, today in the jungle, a sloth is going to be born and a lion is going to be born. They did nothing. The sloth is screwed and the lion is king. Nothing to do about it. Today, 2 mules will be born. One mule's stubborn, one mule's a worker, can plow all day long. The stubborn mule turns into glue, and the hard-working mule works his ass off and then gets to sit in the side yard and eat sugar cubes and carrots in Kentucky bluegrass, where I'm from. No, nothing that they did. There's 3 kinds of luck. But there's also 2 kinds of luck. There's good luck and bad luck. And those things have a tremendous impact on how we do. There's pure luck. That's lightning in a bottle, which can be good luck, or bad luck, that's lightning hitting you in the chest and killing you. That's pure luck. There's planned luck. That's Benjamin Franklin with a kite and a key catching lightning. And then there's practiced luck. Sometimes you see football games or basketball games and they'd run the 2-minute drill. You're like, boy, that was lucky. No, it wasn't. That was practiced luck. They ran those plays over and over and over and over again. Grant Hill, the great basketball player, is my partner in many things. And one night we were flying back from New York, and I talked about he made a pass against Kentucky that broke our hearts in 1991, where he threw the ball the length of the floor. Christian Laettner catches the ball, turns around, shoots the ball. Duke beats Kentucky. It's probably the most famous play in basketball. I said, how did that happen, Grant? He said, how did it happen was this. He goes, we practiced that play every day in practice. He said, we tried to run it against Wake Forest, but we were throwing it down the side and it wasn't working, so we decided to throw from underneath the basket to the top of the key. I said, how'd they go down? He said, Coach K called timeout. We'd practiced that 1,000,000 times. Coach K said, Grant, can you make the pass? He said, Coach, I can make the pass. He said, Christian, can you make the shot? Christian said, I can make the shot. Coach K said, let's go win this game. And they did, and broke Kentucky's heart. It looked like luck. I was thinking when I was flying in here yesterday of all the oil wells in Texas. That's planned luck, but there's more dry holes than gushers, way more. But they all thought that they had the right spot. They thought that their planning was right, but that luck did not shine on them. So then you ask yourself, how do I become lucky? How do I become successful? And the answer that I found in this soon-to-be best-selling book, thanks to 1,000 purchases immediately after I sit down, is you have to constantly be looking for luck. Looking for luck. What are you looking for? If you don't want to call it luck, call it opportunity. You have to always be looking for opportunities. Now look, I also believe that we're born with a genetic seed, an entrepreneurial seed. And that's the paper boy. In Lexington, Kentucky, when I was a little boy, 10 years old, went to the dentist and I had a bad tooth, and my dad, I could hear him talking to the dentist. He said, we can do a root canal or pull it. And he said, how much is a root canal? He said, $50. And how much is a pull it? He said, $5. And he said, well, I guess we're going to have to pull it then. And I'm like, well, I'm screwed again. But I left there that thing, and I said, you know, I'm never going to let anybody be in charge of my teeth again, especially my dad, with no money. And I went and bought a paper route from the Mobley twins. That paper route was the beginning of me, but I had a hunger inside of me. The paper route's a hard thing. You got to get up every day, snow, sleet, rain, it doesn't matter. You got to collect the money. You're 10 years old. I went to the Second National Bank in Lexington. I don't know if you remember Second National Bank. With my grandmother, she co-signed on a loan. I had a loan at the bank. I was making payments. By the time I finished that paper route, I was making like $300 a month. I was flush. And that was the beginning of my beginning as the paper boy. Now, there are ways to find luck and success that I've thought about. And there's books that have been written about it. One, Never Eat Alone. There's a book called Never Eat Alone that I recommend to all of you. I'm going to tell you this. If you think you're going to be successful sitting at your desk eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you're not. I'm here today, and I believe that something will good come from me. Hey, I had dinner with the Lamar people last night, and the head man, he got kind of drunk, and he's probably not here. He's probably hungover, but he agreed to cut my rates in half. I'm like, fine. So by coming here, look what happened. I've saved myself like, you know what, $50 million just by not eating alone, eating with Sean. So never eat alone. The second thing you got to do, you got to have goals. You got to have goals. You got to have written goals every day, written goals. I sold yellow pages before I went to law school. We had to post our numbers, and every day, the goals had to be there. This life is a lot like a casino. There are rules in the casino that you should always follow, but yet people get in life and in business and disregard the rules. Simple things that you should do. In the casino, we all know, maybe we do, maybe we don't, that you don't hit on 16. Because the odds are you're going to lose. You don't hit on 16. Now, you could hit on 16 and get a 5 in blackjack, but the odds are against you. But if you get 2 aces, you got to split 2 aces, and every time you get another ace, you got to split and split and split. There's rules in the casino. It's called the book. Those rules are also in life. The 2 greatest rules that are broken in business, and you all know this because you've dealt with these people, is bad location, undercapitalized. I drive down, I see a restaurant that's been 1,000 different things, and now it's going to be a Vietnam restaurant or whatever, and it's never ever been successful. I'm like, what does it take for you not to do that? And you just look at it and go, that's going to go under. 65% of all small businesses, I got it. That's the mayor of Miami Beach calling me, but I don't know how to get him off. But persistent son of a bitch. But it kind of threw my thought off. But and undercapitalized. Should never have opened with, they opened thinking, all right, what I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to start selling, sushi and the cash flow and then, no. That's the rule. Good location. What do we know? Location, location, location. Same for billboards. But people still break those rules every day. Getting bad luck. And so the same rules that happen in the casino are the same rules that happen in life. The other thing that you can do with luck is you can make bad luck your friend. Failure can be your friend. In Florida, because my brother was hurt, marijuana was a miracle for him. He'd smoke marijuana, his spasms would dissipate, his pain would be eliminated, and it was miraculous. So I decided that I was going to spend tens of millions of my own money to legalize medical marijuana in Florida. And off we went, me and Tim. We barnstormed the state. You had to have 60% to win on a constitutional amendment in Florida, and I lost. I got 58%. From that loss, I learned a great deal. I learned I should have done it in a presidential year. I learned I should have done this. I should have done that. Now I'd been through the forest, and I knew where to go. So what did I decide to do? I said, I'm going to do it again. And I cranked it up again. I took that failure from my first loss. I pumped even more money in it, and we passed it with 73% of the vote the second time. Then I took that failure from that deal, and I said, you know what's unfair is that people are only making $8 an hour. And so I went back and took my millions again, and I did another constitutional amendment in Florida to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, because income inequality, I believe, is what's destroying our country, that people are working their asses off and not getting paid for what they do. Those failures, that first failure turned into my greatest success. I'm in the attraction business. I opened up an attraction in D.C. called the National Museum of Crime and Punishment. It didn't do well. I couldn't make a facade. I couldn't do what I did. But it was one of the greatest things I've ever done. And I decided, maybe D.C. was the wrong thing. I took the exact same stuff. I renamed it. I went to Pigeon Forge. I built an attraction in Pigeon Forge where I have another attraction called WonderWorks. And I named it Alcatraz East, and it gushes money. Failure in D.C., gusher in Pigeon Forge. Failure can be your friend. One danger I will tell everybody about success is success can make you arrogant. Success can make you think it's you. And when you start thinking it's you and that luck had nothing to do with it, you're in for a real rude awakening. Because, look, if that had been my first deal, I might never have done it again. But then there's people who have a couple of successes and they think that they can't fail. They think it's them. They think they're a genius. That's the guy who says, if you took all my money away from me and stripped me naked and put me in New York City, I'd be a billionaire in 10 years. Bullshit. Bullshit. There's too many left turns and right turns and U-turns. And so success can make you arrogant and destroy all this success. Recently, I was interested. Kevin Costner is a very successful actor. Francis Ford Coppola is a very successful director. Both of them put $100 million of their own money into 2 big movies, and guess what? Nobody watched, lost it all. Their arrogance about who Francis Ford or Kevin Costner were got the best of them. And I don't care who you are. Losing $100 million, I mean, that's a bad day. It's hard to handle that. So I want to tell you how I look at the outdoor business. We all talk about the ads as being creative. This is my creative, this is my creative. Well, here's the thing about the creative. Most creative is not creative. Most of the billboards I look at are like, they're wasting their money. And so we at Morgan & Morgan made a real decision, not only in television and radio, but in outdoor, to be creative. I have to admit, I was inspired by Geico and State Farm and Progressive and all those ads you see. I'm like, what are they doing? They're doing comedy skits. But I was inspired by it because they must know something I didn't. So I decided to be creative in my television ads, radio ads, and billboards. So what I want to show you right now is some of my creatives and tell you how they got going. So the first one is, we decided in subways and things like that, that I would make something where, almost like an art gallery. And this is an art gallery of testimonials. When you go there, you see people looking at them like they're in the Louvre, looking at, artwork, taking pictures of it. Then we also decided, you know what? Why don't we get into the sports world? Why don't we start talking to people who are in sports? So we started buying sponsorships in big arenas all over America. I started sponsoring baseball teams. And then I took my sponsorship and said, you know what, in Boston, I'm going to marry the Boston Red Sox, and guess who's pitching? When you're the coach, you get to pitch. I started doing my galleries all around. That's the mascot in Boston, my galleries in the subways. I did that. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And so instead of saying I love New York, I law New York. And you'll see me there in Yankee Stadium when you go. And then we said, well, let's go further. Let's go do some WWE and UFC. And then when we went into certain markets like Boston, we said, well, you know what? Let's talk to the people in Boston. So we came up with things like Wicked Smart. These are crazy looking ads, but you're like, they're crazy, but guess what? People are looking. Then I decided I was going to get in the NASCAR business. So I started sponsoring NASCARs. The great thing about sponsoring NASCARs is you then get to sponsor, but then you can take those images and put them on buses and everything else. My family's a family business. 3 of my sons are lawyers with me. My wife is, as she said, she's the first Morgan in Morgan & Morgan. So my wife is a lawyer, my children are lawyers, and think of how lucky I am to get to be with my family every single day at work. And my daughter has a structured settlement company, so that's a full house. That's an ad in Vegas at the carousel at the airport. Go to Atlanta, Atlanta. I'm sponsoring Chicago Cubs. I just opened up in Chicago. I'm going to go dominate that city now. Sorry to my competitors, but not really sorry. I sponsor UFC, so I got the fight. I get to use the fighters. I get to use the logo. Yankees, that's... I put my boards up in Times Square all the time. That's my son, Daniel. Back to the, how do you like this? Watch your step, New York City. That's me as the Statue of Liberty. One thing you got to do, and one thing Sean and I talked about last night at dinner, you know, if you're not willing to make fun of yourself and be self-effacing, then fuck you. One thing I did crazy is I started defacing my own boards nationwide. I got more media over, everybody say they're defacing your boards, they're making fun of you. That is not a deface. I had the graphics people make these, put them up all over the country. It was like #1 on Reddit for like a month, all my billboards. Kyle Busch, I sponsored Kyle Busch's car, #8, and Rowdy Busch, he's probably the greatest race car driver in America. And then when you sponsor the car, I can take, like up in North Carolina, which is Rowdy Busch crazy, I put the car on the side of the bus and marry me and him. He, by the way, he's got a whiskey called Rebel that's pretty good. I go to Los Angeles, I say, okay, let's do something clever there. Started sponsoring UFC. When I went to Vegas, I wanted to make sure that I blended in with the people, so America's largest injury firm, 30 billion recovered. Then I got into the monster truck business. When I went to DC, when I went to Pennsylvania, I said, well, we got to think of something to call Pennsylvania, so we call it Pennsylvania right there. The one thing about New York, they love their sports, and there's not a more obnoxious fan in the world than a Jets fan. So there I am. I'm with them. We like to do things at Christmas. One year we had Grandma got run over by a reindeer. This next one, you're going to say, what is this? And you know, I do, because I legalized marijuana. I love to smoke marijuana, and so I was smoking marijuana when I came up with this ad. I don't know what. I have no idea what it means, but I was just so fucked up. But it's me on a pigeon. No rhyme, no reason, but there it is. When I went to Los Angeles, I wanted to kind of fit in, so I said, you know, we'll do a perfume. We'll have a perfume. I was so impressed by the Chick-fil-A ad with the cow that was climbing up on the billboard. Remember that? And Trisha Barr, who's my right arm in all of this, I said, how much that cow cost? She said $150,000 a cow. I didn't want to spend $150,000, but I was inspired by that Chick-fil-A billboard, so I made this ad inspired by Chick-fil-A's cow. Because we're the biggest firm in the country, I decided to hell, if we're the biggest firm in the country, we're the biggest firm in the universe, right? I mean, unless there's life on Mars. When I went to Philadelphia, there's a term in Philadelphia that's like cool. It's kind of and so it's a word that's used by Philadelphia. It's called John. And I said, I'm John Morgan. The people of Philadelphia were going nuts about it. You're not from here. You're not allowed to do that. Well, I am doing it. And I'm John Morgan. Because we live in Orlando, Florida, where Walt Disney World is, and because I worked at Disney, I started as Fiddler Pig. I then was promoted to King Louie, and then later, because of my dancing skills, I was promoted to Pluto. So in honor of Mary Poppins, this is a bus that I have in Orlando, Florida. I love Mary Poppins. And then what we did also, the gallery idea, to have people looking at your ads, wanting to see your ads, I did these. Now, as you can see, that's when I was in shape there in the middle. And I had that billboard up and down the highway in Florida of that one with me with his shirt off. That's really not my body. It is my tan, but it's not my body. But I will tell you this, that ad right there, I had so many unsolicited women calling me trying to hook up when they saw that ad on the billboard, so I kept it up a little bit longer than usually. Now, I'm going to do something that I wasn't going to do, but I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to do it for you all, and I'm going to trust that you all will not breach this confidence, I'm going to show you something. I never do this, but because I'm here and because we're all in the business together, a preview of my 2027 billboards. Now, some of you may have McDonald's as a client, so this could upset them, but so here's 2027. If you had your balls burned, call Morgan & Morgan. And McDonald's, cool the coffee down for it. So I took the size matters billboard. A lot of people said, we know what you're doing. We know what size matters really means. So I was like, okay, fuck you. Here we go. And because I did so well with the perfume, I said, well, how about, Russell Crowe? Here I come. And then finally, not finally, but the new ad for our Christmas next year is Santa Claus. And this last one is kind of my favorite of all time. And this is my message to the insurance industry everywhere. So don't tell anybody about these. Let me just say this in closing. I want to tell you all a story. The greatest fight of all time was the Thrilla in Manila. Joe Frazier versus Muhammad Ali. Unbelievable. They fought all the way to the very end. At the very end of the fight, if you go back to your room tonight, watch it. At the very end of the fight, they could barely get to their corner. Muhammad Ali said to Angelo Dundee, cut my gloves off, I can't go. In the other corner was Eddie Futch, Joe Frazier's trainer. Joe Frazier's eye, he could barely see out. Eddie Futch put his fingers up. He said, how many fingers do I have up? And he didn't know. He said, champ, I can't let you go out there. In the other corner, Ali was like, cut my gloves off. And Joe Frazier was saying to Eddie Futch, if you throw in the towel, I'll never speak to you again. The bell rang. Ding, 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 15 round. You will see Bundini Brown and Angelo Dundee pushing Ali to stand up. In the other corner, you'll see Eddie Futch when he sees that Ali is going to answer the bell. And for his love for Joe Frazier, he threw in the towel. Ali took 3 steps and collapsed. He couldn't go on. He was not going to be able to finish the fight. The moral of that story to you all today, look, business is tough. We get knocked down, we got to get back up. We fail, we got to make failure our friend. But what we have to do every day is we have to answer the bell. You have to be willing to get up and gut it out and answer the MFer bell. And the other lesson that I took from that when I was writing my book, it also depends on who's in your corner. Who believes in you? Who has the will to win? If left to their own devices, Joe Frazier would have won that fight because Ali couldn't continue. And instead of Ali being the greatest, Joe Frazier would have been the greatest. But on that day, in that Thrilla in Manila, Ali answered the bell, and he had people in his corner who believed in him. Who your partners are in life and love make a great difference in luck. So I will close by saying this from our great friend, the billboard pioneer, Ted Turner. If you remember nothing else, Mike Wallace asked Ted Turner, do you have any words of advice? He said, yep, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise. As we say in Hawaii in the winter, and before I go, I want to thank you all very much for inviting me here. It's been great to meet a lot of you. But as we say in Hawaii, and until we meet again, aloha. Thank you.
John Morgan. Wow. Thank you so much, John.